Well, welcome to the Business Spotlight series. My name is Tanner O'Brien. I'm a senior partner here at Action Coach in Central Texas, and I'm sitting down today with Kurt Wilkin, who is the co-founder of HireBetter and the author of Who's Your Mic. Super excited to be talking about a number of things when it comes to business in general, some of the challenges, best practices, really just kind of share a sneak peek into what it's really like to build or scale different businesses and companies out there from what's it look like from marketing to team building, a whole bunch of other stuff. So I'm sure we're going to get into a bunch of stuff in the time that we have here today. But Kurt, thank you so much for taking the time and being able to sit down with me today. If we could, let's just start with a little bit of background. Give us the 10,000-foot view of who you are and your background specifically, and then tell us a little bit about HireBetter.
Yeah, first of all, Tanner, thanks for having me. I love what you guys are doing at Action Coach to really support the entrepreneurial community. So really keep it up. Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
So yeah, Kurt Wilkin. I'm a CPA by trade. I went to Arkansas, and as I tell people, I grew up in South Louisiana and I live in Austin, Texas. So redneck, coon ass, and hillbilly in one beautiful package. Started my career with Ernst & Young, and there's a whole story about the just fortunate ability to get that opportunity back in my early days. We can talk about if we want. Went off on my own in the early 2000s, built a professional service firm to about 110 or 20 employees and about 20 million in revenue, and had a successful exit to a professional service firm called Tatum. And when I left there, I realized I was unemployable. And so I sought out my next adventure, and I wanted to do something for entrepreneurs. I knew that the biggest things that we and you need to be successful are capital and talent. And I felt like the capital industry, if you will, has served in so many different ways, but I didn't like the way the talent industry, the recruiting industry was set up. And so I bought HireBetter. It was a very small firm at the time and back in 2011. And we've been building our little niche to support the entrepreneurs and helping them scale for the last 12 years.
Amazing. There's so many things I'm excited to ask about in that little bit of background there. But let's start with HireBetter, and then we'll kind of come back into kind of the journey into entrepreneurship and some of the lessons that you've learned along the way. Um, but I always like to just generally set the stage, and I think you've kind of started a little bit of this for us already. But we have the opportunity to talk to so many different types of businesses and different growth models and things like that. And we've had the sole founders, to those that have a couple different business partners, to those that have taken on investors, and then kind of in that name of the game, right? So I always like to just kind of set the stage for this conversation and for your business. Was it something that were the sole founder, you purchased the business, and that's kind of how it was set up? Did you have business partners? Have you had to take on or chosen to take on outside investment? Kind of what does that structure look like for you?
Yeah, and there's a great story there. And actually, let me back up, because what we didn't talk about is I also do angel and early investing, and I've got about 200 investments under our belt over the last 20 years. So we talk about all the interactions with entrepreneurs as we go. Your question about partners or no, with the Controller Group, which is my company that I talked about that grew to 20 million, I started it myself, and I quickly took on a partner out of convenience, and candidly, it was the wrong partner. And then, but he introduced me to another partner, Brett Lawson, who turned out to be really my lifelong, work wife, if you will. He's been just my partner in so many ways. He compliments me, and we can get into that as well. Sold it. He started his own deal. I started my own deal, and we realized we weren't as successful independently because we needed that yin and yang to work. And so for HireBetter, we've had a tremendous run, but I've missed that operating partner mindset that Brett brought, and it's been more of a struggle, to be honest. I've been humbled, that's for sure.
I love that. If we could, let's kind of dive into the business partnership, having the right fit, from, maybe having that experience of someone that maybe wasn't a great fit for the business partner and then finding someone that was a good fit. How do you navigate that? If I'm just kind of setting, I don't know, an example out there. If I'm watching this and I'm a sole founder, kind of struggling, maybe needs that operational mindset, or maybe I'm really operational, but I need kind of the other side with a little bit more vision and strategy and focus. How do I navigate the waters and what that might look like to find a partner that would be good to work with?
Yeah, there's definitely pros and cons to having a partner and not having one. And many of us, and I'll speak for most entrepreneurs, we want that silver bullet, somebody to come in and save the day and be, again, that yin to the yang. It's not that easy, of course. And choosing a partner is like choosing a spouse. It's a long commitment. It's not something that you're just going to be able to hire and fire like you could an employer or a contractor. And so I think a great relationship comes down to three key things, and that is trust each other, respect each other, and then communicate. Trust, respect, and communication. If you have those three things, you have a great start. And any of those things break down, it could be a challenge. And Brett and I fought a lot. We would have disagreements, and he'd come in with a position, and I'd say, no, that's not the right position. And we'd ultimately end up in the middle or one of the right solution, whichever way it tended to land. But we needed that. I needed somebody that could stand up to me and push back. With
Mm.
HireBetter, I had a great early, partner, former employee that worked with me, and she was great, but she didn't stand up to me. So if I came in and said no, she said okay, and I needed her to be more of an asshole, right? To stand up to me.
I love that. I mean, that there's so much to that, and being able to have that push and pull, right? Um, do you? I'm curious when you look at complementary styles or complementary skill sets, things like that. Do you think that's important? Operational versus visionary. Anything like? I know that's a very broad spectrum to look at, but how do you view that as an important factor or not an important factor when bringing on business partners in general?
Yeah, I think a mistake a lot of people do make is they look to somebody that is like them, like they both like to play golf, or they both like to have fun, or they both, and that's a good friend, but it's not always the best business partner. So I think we need skills that are not definitely doesn't have to be directly opposite, but definitely complementary to what we do. And so, and I am a big fan of the visionary and operating partner mindset. In fact, there's a couple of chapters in Who's Your Mic dedicated to that concept, and how it works, and how do you find them, and how you on board together, because it's definitely a lot of art.
So, what's been your favorite when you look at the structure of the business, the roles, the hats that you could wear within any business along your journey? What have been the ones that have stood out and been the ones that you gravitate to the most?
Well, I'm a connector. I like to spot opportunities, and how can I connect Tanner to how can I connect them to somebody who might need your services or just need your counsel or whatever. So that's definitely one. I'll tell you what I'm not. I'm not a detail or operational person. And it also makes me a crappy manager. And what a lot of entrepreneurs don't understand that about themselves. And so they really struggle trying to be that great manager. And they read books like Traction and Rockefeller Habits, and they think, I got to get better at this. Reality is that embrace your gift. And if you are really, really good at what you're gifted at, you're going to be phenomenal as long as you have finding somebody on your team who can complement those skill sets. Don't try to be somebody that you're not.
Hmm. I absolutely love that. All right, I want to dive a little bit more into Hire Better, and we can kind of navigate through this conversation a bit more. But for Hire Better, as you look at that business specifically, I always like to ask just the general question of like, who do you serve, right? And the best way I like to frame it up is if I'm sitting in the audience and I'm listening to this or watching this later on, how do I know I'd be a really good fit to leverage your services, or I might know another business owner, another individual that might be a good fit to come check out what y'all are doing. How would we frame that up for the audience?
Yeah, so I'll say just broadly, we have a very broad set of services. So there's a lot of folks we can talk to, but here's where if I really narrow down, if you are in this position and you don't talk to us, you might be making a mistake. So that is typically entrepreneurs or entrepreneurial companies who are growing rapidly. Or at least they're growth minded. They want to grow. It's not just a stale family business or whatever. And you're past the startup phase. You've got a proven concept, and you're starting to, a lot of people use the word scale, and I think it's overused, but you're trying to go from 5 million to 20 million. And you start realizing that members of your team have probably been left behind. They've outgrown. You know you need to professionalize your team, professionalize your operations, your systems, your infrastructure, all that stuff that tends to break when you get to that inflection point. That's when people call us, or you should call us, I should say, and we help you build a roadmap, both talent wise, and you don't always need new talent. So I know we're in the recruiting business, but but we consider ourselves strategic talent partners. That means maybe Tanner doesn't need a new CFO. He needs a coach for his controller, or
Mm.
maybe Tanner doesn't need to get rid of his this key employee. Let's put him in the right seat where they can be successful. All those things happen in that scrambly past the startup. Now you're starting to scale phase.
That's really cool. When, I know there's been a number of kind of recruiting firms, things like that, that I feel have just kind of started to come um, uh, out of the market a little bit more than I've at least noticed in the past. And is this approach that y'all take kind of wildly different from a lot of the other competitors out there? Kind of being in the industry for a while now, what do you see in the competitive landscape that really sets you apart from those that are also in kind of that recruiting space?
Yeah. Well, first of all, there are a boatload, and I don't know if I can curse on the show, so I won't, but there are a boatload of bad recruiters. And it's given the industry a very bad name. You've got the used car mentality, and they're trying to make money by flipping bodies, and they might steal somebody out of your own organization so they can place them somewhere else, and they get a fee from you to replace them. It can be a shady industry. So a lot of people questioned me when I told them I was getting into it. We bring a level of professionalism to it, and we bring a level of strategic perspective that most people in this earlier stage business, the lower middle market, don't really have. So the Korn Ferries and Russell Reynolds and Egon Zinders, these are big, large, mega recruiting firms that work with large companies, but their smallest fee they'll charge is like $100,000 for a position. We bring a similar type of approach to the lower middle market. And I would tell you, it's hard. That's where I've been humbled, because I want to serve this market so much. I love entrepreneurs. I love people that make a difference. I love working with good people. But we're bringing something that they've never really, they need, but they don't want to buy necessarily. So it's been tough, but it's worthwhile for me because it's really my calling.
Well, let's jump on that for a second, because I always love to ask a couple questions around marketing. It's an area that vital in every business that wants to grow, but it's not always the thing that, especially kind of smaller businesses or newer to the business space, unless you've had a big background in marketing, it tends to be an area that we kind of tend to stumble upon a little bit here and there. So I always like to find out what successful companies are doing when it comes to marketing, kind of some lessons learned, things like that. So going after the market that is best for HireBetter, what are some of the lessons that you've learned, or what's the philosophy that y'all take to marketing these services in an area where maybe they don't know that they need the services yet? Like what approach or philosophy have you taken around marketing?
Well, like you at Action Coach, I'm sure a cold call doesn't really work that well. You're trying to sell something, as you said, that you need, but you don't know that you don't want, right? Or you don't want to pay for. And so most of our business comes from referral, from satisfied clients and candidates who have worked with us in the past. A lot of our work comes from coaches and people who work in that, like CPA firms and attorneys and folks who have that trusted advisor type of perspective. So the traditional recruiting model of just calling you and blitzing you and hammering you until you say yes doesn't work for us, because we are, and what we didn't talk about is our model. Most of our executive searches are, it's called retained search. So you would retain us to hire a CFO or whatever. And it means you pay a little bit of money up front. It's not just contingent upon making a hire, which is what the traditional recruiting industry does at this stage, at the smaller stage. So we're asking for money up front, which ties us together. We are now your partners and we're working hand in hand. But it's sometimes hard to stroke a large check for a CFO on the front end. So we need that trusted advisor. And we need to earn your trust. If I don't earn your trust, we don't have a business.
So how does this compare to building the previous professional services firm that you had and being able to exit from it? Was the marketing process different for that business that is in this one? And like how so? And like what did you see in that business that was wildly different but yet still successful?
It's a good question. I hadn't really thought about it like that, but let me just reflect for a second. That business was more project based. So we were doing a lot of projects for clients. And so we would get our foot in the door. We'd work with one or two people out there. And before you know it, we might have 10 folks on assignment out there with our clients. And so it was solving your challenge. But in hindsight, we were more successful if your challenge was never officially fixed, right? If I could keep my team out there forever, we'd make more money. And that just didn't feel good. And so with HireBetter, I wanted to solve your problem permanently. That's why I got into the recruiting business, which it is it's different. And so if I can place Tanner and he's your CEO and he's able to build his own team on his own, I worked my way out of a job, which is great. But that's really what I want to do ethically and just with my purpose versus don't hire Tanner, hire a bunch of people that we can just keep out there until you scream for mercy. So I don't know if that answered your question. I kind of rambled there for a second, but it's different because now we're really trying to we have to gain that trust for a larger role on the front side as opposed to earning it over the course of an engagement.
Mm. Yes, that 100% answers the question. I do it. All right. So I want to let's take a step back here, and I want to talk a little bit more about your journey, and I want to ensure that we have a little bit of time to kind of talk a little bit about building team and some things like that. Talk a little bit about the things that are in your book. But before we do, I feel it's important to kind of dig through kind of the journey that you've had so far. So CPA by trade, shifting into building a business, exiting, all of that type of stuff. Walk us through kind of maybe let's just start with the transition from working for somebody else to choosing to build a business. What was the catalyst to making that decision in your life?
Yeah, I'm a big fan. That's why my podcast is called Unlocking Moves, because I believe all of us have some key decision point or pivotal moment that really changes our trajectory. And I call it an unlocking move. For me, that was one of them. I was at Ernst and Young, and I was, had a good career. I wasn't the best accountant, though. I got to tell you, I tell people I'm a bad accountant, which I would have made a great partner at a CPA firm, but I wouldn't have gotten there because I didn't care enough technically. But the unlocking move was realizing, well, first of all, and then I went to work for a .com and it went belly up. And so that was the impetus to be an entrepreneur. And many of your members of your audience probably started their entrepreneurial journey out of some, COVID chaos or losing their job or some sort of, down in the dumps. And so for me, it was, I had a baby and a new wife and I had a no job. And so I had to make ends meet. So I started consulting to make ends meet. So that was the impetus. But what I uncovered along the way is entrepreneurialism is in my blood. And I needed to scratch that itch. I needed to create on my own and build a team versus working for the man, so to speak.
When you look at kind of this journey so far, and I'm sure this probably has a number of answers to it, but is there any uh, challenge that you've been faced with along the way that is kind of accelerated the lessons that you've had to learn to become the business owner that you are today? I'm sure it was a growth path along, the number of years, but is there kind of any challenges that you were faced with or roadblocks that you had to overcome that really accelerated some of the major lessons that you believe are important in entrepreneurship overall?
The only word that's tripping me up, Tanner, is accelerating, because I'm not always the quickest learner. But I will tell you that I was fortunate with the controller group with Brett, as I mentioned, and then with HireBetter, it took me a long time to finally realize and recognize that I was lacking that partner, that yin and yang. And so that was a harsh lesson. Actually, I'll tell you a quote from the book. So in 2015, we had been growing rapidly, and we were on the top line, we looked good. And from the outside, we looked good. But we were throwing bodies at problems. I told people, we're scaling, let's go, we got to grow. And we would add people and I looked up and we're losing money, or we're just not very successful. And I had a friend come in and poke his head in a little bit, probably like an action coach. And he said, after, a couple of days of looking under the covers, he said, Kurt, you've built a lifestyle business for everybody but you. Meaning everybody else is working 6 hours remotely, going to the club or whatever. Kurt's busting his ass. And that was hard to hear. And it really gave me a key awakening, so to speak.
Mm. That is pretty amazing. I love that it's it's an outside perspective that is just an observation of something to take a look at, and it causes, some dissatisfaction, which may cause some different change along the way. So that is a phenomenal example that I'm certain many entrepreneurs can relate to. Um, but take me through the process of choosing to write a book and publish a book. What was the catalyst moment to make that choice and start to put this down? And tell us a little bit about the book overall.
Yeah. So in my, I guess, almost 30 years now, professional career, mostly in professional services, mostly with this market I talked about, entrepreneurs that are trying to scale. I've just seen the pattern so many times. And probably 7 or 8 years ago, I wrote an article called Who's Your Mike? And I'll tell you the story on Mike real quick. And it just resonates with pretty much everybody who hears it, especially if you're in the entrepreneurial world. So who's Mike? Mike is your basically one of your early employees. It's your bookkeeper. Maybe he started as just maybe a buddy in college, but over time he joined your team full time. He's doing all the administrative things, the stuff that you hate, the stuff that you suck at. And then you make him your accountant because you need that role. And so he learns QuickBooks and he starts handling all your finances, and you trust him immensely. Then the next logical title is controller and ultimately CFO. And now, Mike's been there for 5 years and you guys are doing 5 or 10 million in revenue and you're a real company and the problems become bigger. Mike is doing the best he can, but he's the one-armed paper hanger trying to solve all these things, working 100 hours a week and really doing the best he can. But he's never done this before and he's struggling and he's in over his head. So the question is, who's your Mike? Everybody's got a Mike, whether it's finance and accounting or whether it's sales, marketing, or operations. We have employees that are just over titled, over promoted. And now yesterday's hero is becoming today's liability. So I would share that article. I share that story with people over lunch or coffee or whatever. And the heads are nodding like, yeah, I got a Mike. And then I wanted to bring the message of that type of situation that entrepreneurs deal with all the time. I wanted to bring it to a broader audience. I wanted to bring it to thousands and millions versus just one or two at a lunch. And so that was the, I guess, the impetus. And actually COVID brought me out of my comfort zone. I started doing CEO forums. I started doing LinkedIn lives to support other entrepreneurs. And that got me out of my comfort zone. And here I am doing, podcasts and speaking and books and stuff. And it's been very rewarding to hear all the ways that we're impacting lives with our various stories.
Mm. So I always like to ask a few questions around team, and this is an incredible segue into the topic. Um, when you have a Mike, when you have somebody like that in the organization that's been with you forever, what are some key things that you believe business owners, entrepreneurs can start to look at today? Just a few tips, maybe not resolve it tomorrow, but what are a few things that they can look at or start doing to navigate that particular situation?
Yeah, great question. And every situation is different. There's no science. It's definitely more art than science, I should say. So let me quick background. The book is set up with every chapter is a different archetype. So there's Mike, there's another guy is Harry the Hustler, who's your best sales guy that you over promote to sales leader. And he's not a sales leader or manager. He's just a sales guy. And so now you've got a crappy leader and you've lost your best salesperson. Different stories. And they're not all legacy employees, but every segment, so the 5 chapters about legacy employees, has an intermission that has advice. And so that's one of my key pieces of advice for those legacy employees is what I'm about to tell you. So some of my best advice I'm going to give you is directly from the book. It's just these 4 questions I like to ask about those legacy employees. So number 1, knowing today what you know about your organization and where you're going, would you enthusiastically rehire Mike for his existing role? Enthusiastically. I think these, by the way, all these questions are amalgamated from people like Gino Wickman and Vern Harnish and, thought leaders in the space. So maybe Mike's good in another role. Maybe Mike's a great guy, but he's not great as a CFO. The next question is, does Mike have the skills, experience, and tools to get us to the next level? However you decide to define that. And usually, if you're asking the question, the answer is no. The next 2 questions are more gut related, like what do I feel in my gut? So the first one is, what if I had a team full of Mikes? How would I feel? And sometimes the entrepreneur's like, oh crap, I can't imagine having that much drama around, or, oh my gosh, it would be chaotic. So that's just, again, a gut question. And the last one is, what if Mike came into your office tomorrow and quit? And there might be an initial visceral, like, oh my gosh, I hate change. I don't, what would I do? But longer term, you would probably have comfort that Mike is gone and the drama is gone, and that you could replace him with a next level employee. So that's my four go-to questions when it comes to assessing your legacy team.
I love that. And then, step one, ask the questions. Step two, make sure everybody here goes and picks up a copy of the book. I'll put some things down here in the video description as we go through. But Kurt, I do want to be respectful of the time that we had together here today. I know we could probably spend, I don't know, 2 hours really chatting about a number of different things, in business and all the experience that you've accumulated along the way. But I do want to be respectful. So I like to kind of wrap up with a few rapid fire questions. Again, questions that we could probably go a little bit deeper on, but we'll go top head answers for these here today. Just kind of quick little things for the audience. And then we'll jump into kind of what I always like to end these conversations on. There's one specific question here. But before we do that, the four rapid fire questions I've got.
Okay.
The first one here, Kurt, what is your key to success?
Knowing your strengths and augmenting your weaknesses with other talent.
Ooh, I like that. What is one piece of advice you would give to other business owners?
It takes perseverance and persistence. You got to keep getting up off the mat. The winners in life aren't the ones who never fail. They're the ones who never quit.
Love that. All right, this will be a fun one, and also you can't use your book because I'm going to put that out there anyway. But what's one book that either you're currently reading or have read most recently?
I read The End of the World is Just the Beginning by Peter Zion, which is an interesting book about the whole supply chain and logistics and world global order.
Ooh, fascinating. Final rapid fire question. This is kind of just a fun one here. If you had to choose just one area in your business today that you could pick up, a basket of magical dust and sprinkle it all over, and you'd wake up tomorrow and it was, 100 times better than it was today, where would you choose to put that magic dust?
It would be on the I'll say customer experience, and making sure that all of our clients have a consistent experience, and we do such great work when we do work with clients, but we don't always have a process for continuing to stay engaged with you. And that's an area of focus for us for sure.
Beautiful. So before we get to my final question that I love to end these conversations on, for the audience, where can they go to find out more information? I know you mentioned a podcast out there. Obviously, there's the book. Learning more just about HireBetter in general, to connect with you, follow you, that sort of thing. Where can we encourage the audience to go and find out more information?
Yeah, you bet. LinkedIn is a good one for me. It's just Kurt Wilkin, KurtWilkin. And on our Who's Your Mike website, we have a fun quiz that you can take to see if you have any of these archetypes that we lay out in the book. It's at who'syourmike.com/quiz. And then Unlocking Moves is it's just great conversations like this. We have some very interesting people when we uncover some of their key moments. And that's Unlocking Moves. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube.
Beautiful. For those that are watching, I'll make sure all of this is in the video description, the link here below. So make sure that you take a moment after we wrap up here today, go click those links, check out all that information, check out the podcast, check out the book, take that quiz, be absolutely amazing. So Kurt, thank you once again. Let's finish off here with one of my favorite questions, and that's simply this. What is most inspiring to you today?
What is most inspiring to me today? It's I think people who are living their highest and best use, people that are have found what fuels them and living a passionate life. I had a Bible study this morning with a good friend who uncovered that for himself, and it was just exciting to watch. So living vicariously through other people's passions.
Fantastic. Kurt, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with me to chat. Like I said, I know we could probably sit here and really just peel back so many different things and have an even longer conversation, but I do want to be respectful of the time that we've set up here for today. So thank you so much for taking the time and being willing to share some of this with our audience.
You bet, Tanner. I love what you're doing. Thanks for having me.